Welcome again, and welcome to the July edition of the Kentucky Monthly Climate Perspectives on drought and hydrological conditions. And I didn't expect too many today, so thanks for joining with the holiday tomorrow. This webinar series is presented by the Kentucky Climate Center at Western Kentucky University in partnership with the National Integrated Drought Information System, NIDIS, and in coordination with the Midwest Drought Early Warning System. Production and delivery of this webinar reflects the contributions of many partners committed to serving the needs of the Commonwealth of Kentucky and its people. Our next regularly scheduled webinar is a little later in the month of August. It's August 7th at our normal time on Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Central Time. And this webinar is being recorded and is available for viewing on its presented live stream on the Kentucky Climate Center YouTube channel. And the webinar is archived and available for viewing on the YouTube channel. So without further ado, let's just jump in here. What you see in the picture here is one of our Mesnet site cameras from mid-June. It was a beautiful month with, of course, lots of clouds and rain, which made for a lot of beautiful sunrises and sunsets and some pretty fantastic storms, as we'll see. And as normal, we'll start with some recent conditions and look at those impacts, and then we'll move into looking ahead at monthly and seasonal outlooks, and then we'll take Q&A at the end. On the left here are a couple of other Mesnid site camera photos. The top one's from Grayson County on June 16th. You can see the rainbow there in the distance, and then the lower pictures from Hopkins County a few days later on June 19th. Again, lots of clouds and storms around during the month, as we'll see in the data. So just jumping into temperatures here, I guess the one memorable thing about the month was that it was pretty warm. And June temperatures averaged close to just shy of 76 degrees, which was actually 3.4 degrees above average. And that tied us with 1933 as the 10th warmest June on record out of 131 years. You see the upper left picture there, the average temperatures for the month. But it felt hot during the day, but if you look at the high temperatures, it wasn't really the high temperatures as much as it was the low temperatures, the minimum temperatures overnight that were anomalously warm. And if you break that down by climate division, the west wasn't as hot. It was 2.8 degrees above normal, but climate division 2, which stretches from Louisville to Bowling Green and parts to the east, over 4 degrees above average. And then the bluegrass and eastern regions were 3.3 and 3.4 degrees above. So a warm month, and that warmth looks like it'll continue at least for the short term. If we look at the year to date, we're now halfway through the year, and June really bumped us up there because June was so warm. Prior to that, we were warm, but not nearly as much. And so January through June now, the average is 52.9 degrees, which puts us at 1.2 degrees above normal, which ties us as the 26th warmest January to June on record. And again, if you break that down by climate divisions, it's really the western half that's the warmest, the far west, 1.2 degrees above. Again, that climate division 2, Louisville to Bowling Green and parts east, 1.8 degrees above. And then the eastern two regions, just about a degree above. Now, jumping into precipitation, this is from 2 days ago, so the 7th, a week prior to the last few days. Of course, it's been a little drier. Across the state over the last week, most sites not that much, but you see quite a bit of variability as you get with these convective rains. They're pretty hit or miss. Your neighbor may get an inch and you may get 0. So, and that shows up here. You see some sites close to 0, 0.02. some with a 1/4 inch, but then you see a few in here that are over 2 inches. There, one in Shelby County there, 2.17. I know parts of north side of Lexington had quite a bit recently, and you see some pretty high amounts in there for the week, but pretty variable too. We go back 2 weeks, it gets a little more widespread. There you see that close to 5 inches, 4 and 3/4 inches above, just north of Lexington, 3.5 there and near Covington, 5.9, 5.89. Some pretty high amounts in some of these localized storms that weren't moving very fast. And once again, that's pretty common for this time of year. Um, we go back a month, and wow, there's some pretty large amounts for just a month's time. You see a couple of sites with 10 inches just over the last month. And here we have a 9 inch out in far western Ballard. So, but on the other hand, not all areas got that much. You see a couple 2.3 down in Pike. So again, pretty sporadic, but generally parts central western Kentucky, quite a bit of rain over the last 30 days. And when we go to the last 60 days, that's when you see some very large amounts, 15 to even 20 inches over the last 2 months. And again, primarily over central Kentucky, um, stretching out to parts of the west. A few counties on the north side, eastern Kentucky, lower amounts, but generally pretty widespread rainfall. And then again, we go back 90 days and then starts capturing some of the flooding rains, and you see quite a few sites here, especially again across central Kentucky, over 20, 25 inches of rainfall, just over a 90-day period. And remember, our average for the year is around 50 inches, so to have half that amount in just 3 months is unusual, to say the least. Now on the left is the last month's precipitation and percent of normal. You see in the upper left, again, large portion of Kentucky, except for the northern fringe and eastern counties of the state have had well over 7.5 inches for the month of June. And as a percent of normal, we're looking at well over 100%, if not 125, and in a few areas over 150% of normal. And then on the right is again the cumulative precip for the first half of the year, and you see stretching from roughly Lexington all the way points to the southwest, a nice large swath of pretty high rainfall amounts, over 40 inches, which again for this time of year is unprecedented. And then you see in the lower right the let me move the little box out of the way here. Uh, over areas over 150% of normal for this time of year. And when you're talking that those large amounts, that's a tremendous amount above normal. So let's get to the numbers. What do the statistics tell us? Well, for the last month, we averaged 5 and 3/4 inches of rainfall, which puts us nearly 1.5 inches above normal. That's 135% of average. And that puts us as the 16th wettest June on record out of the 131 years. Now, 5 and 3/4 inches may sound like a lot, but when you look at 1928, that June had over 11.5 inches. So I'm glad we're not number one this month. But still the 16th wettest. And when you break it down by climate division, you see the western two regions, Climate Division 1 and 2 averaged 6.63 inches across the far west, and Climate Division 2, 6.88 inches. So just tremendous amounts of rainfall. And then the eastern two regions, the bluegrass, just over 4.5 inches, 4.64, and then the eastern region, 4.99 inches. So high rainfall amounts all across the state, but particularly more so across the the western half, where again the western region got 166% of average, the climate division 2 158% of average. So tremendously wet June. And again, when we go back to January through June, the state as a whole averaged over 39.4 inches of rain, which puts the state at 14 inches above normal, which is 155% of normal. And that means that so far, 2025 is still the wettest year on record. And we're ahead in number one by quite a bit, actually. The old record was 1935, and they had a total 37.55 inches. So we're, you know, uh, trying to do my math, almost 2 inches above normal, above the previous record holder, which again, for a statewide average is just tremendous. And again, when you break it down by climate division, the western half of the state is averaging over 40 inches. Climate division 2, 45.6 inches of rainfall so far this month. And again, the annual total that we'd expect is around 50 inches. So just again, tremendous numbers. And here are some year-to-date totals from the Kentucky Mesonet stations. There is a mistake here. We've added two new stations this year, and they crept into my plot. We have a new station at Clay County and a new station at in Spencer County that was just installed. And so they've messed up my map. So I'm going to redo this, but ignore those. The point here is you can see a pretty large swath from central Kentucky stretching out to the southwest, well over 40 inches. And we have two stations already that have exceeded their typical annual total in Greene and Marshall counties, and quite a few counties over 45 inches. So just tremendous numbers for this time of year. It's really unprecedented, and hopefully it stays that way. All right, we're shifting gears a little bit. We did manage to get a lightning strike uh, on camera, which is difficult to do. We've been hoping to catch one for a long time, and we finally got one. So if you thought this year was stormy, you'd be correct. I know the last few storms that I've seen have been really electrical, which is kind of fun to watch. But so let's get into the numbers, though. And this really surprised me. So this is a chart showing the total number of warnings from severe storms and tornadoes as they've accumulated across the state for each year. And so this this shows that 2025 is second, going back to 1986. So far this year is second only to 2011, which is another very wet year. So it looks like there's at least a relatively strong correlation between the total amount of rainfall and the number of severe storms that you have in your state. But this number really surprised me. I didn't realize we were quite this high. Now this is from all the WFOs across the state. So this is cumulative from across all the counties of Oklahoma. I mean Kentucky. And breaking that down into tornadoes and severe storms, the upper left is tornadoes. We're number 3 behind 2011 and 2012. 2012 mostly because of one outbreak in early March. But so we're number 3 in tornadoes behind 2011, 2012, and number 2 in the number of severe storms. So again, I was surprised by this. I didn't realize that we had quite this many. But again, when you look at especially the tornado count, a lot of that came in really two big events, which again is not terribly unusual when you look at these other years. All right, we're shifting gears again, uh, turning our attention to drought, which we've probably not thought about since our last webinar. And you can see from this map, the much of the country is far improved over where we've been. In fact, areas east of the Rockies have improved quite a bit, and now there's probably the least amount of drought that I've seen in quite some time, except for areas around Nebraska, South Dakota, and along the Canadian border, a few uh, areas of northern Illinois. For the most part, the eastern U.S. is drought-free, especially in the Ohio, Tennessee valleys, where especially even during the winter, we saw parts of Appalachia and Tennessee into some pretty, at least moderate drought. But all that has quickly gone away. And parts of western U.S. are now dealing with drought, but we're staying pretty wet. And of course, Kentucky's completely drought-free, not even abnormally dry in any county. And it's interesting, I tried to go back and find the last time that we had any drought, and it's December 17th was the last time we had any D1 in our state, and that was just maybe one, maybe two counties in kind of southeastern Kentucky. We did have D0 there up through January 28th, but nothing since then. So we're about 6 months drought free. And I'm going to have to go back and see what our longest period of drought free is. That'll be an interesting statistic to find. But no drought in our foreseeable future, at least it looks that way in the outlooks right now. Again, the change in the drought index over the last month, you can see kind of worsening drought across parts of the northwest U.S., but otherwise across the country, improving drought across most of the rest of the country. And of course, no drought in our region. A couple of other maps, again, using the satellite imagery estimates, pretty wet in our area across the Ohio Valley. In fact, very wet. You get into parts of northern Illinois, Ohio, Illinois, it dries out a bit. Those areas are still dealing with some dryness, but for the most part, in our state, we're actually quite wet. If you look at the stream flows from the last week, you see pretty average stream flows across the eastern half of the state. And across the western half, you still have some pretty high uh, water flows there. If you look at the last month, most of the streams and rivers across most of the state are pretty high, especially for this time of year. If we look at soil moisture across the state, the deeper levels are pretty moist still. In fact, pretty well saturated at most sites at least at 40 inches and below. 20 inches, there's some dryness, but not much. You really have to get above that near the surface before you see any significant drying. And I'm always surprised at how quickly though that topsoil dries out. But in this case, the mid-lower layers are pretty saturated and pretty much statewide from what I could find. Well, the big question is how's that impacting our agricultural uh, crops? And in this was a pretty picture from Breathitt County. You may recall this is one of our sites that looks out over some an area that was flooded from the floods, and you can see that this field is still pretty wet. I'm not sure if they tried to plant something here or not, but it looks like it was, you can see the rows there, but you also see quite a bit of water in that field. So maybe this is one of the fields that has really suffered from the early season flooding. But so let's take a look at that. Um, Matt, the USDA is messing with my plots. I really had to look for these again, but I digress. So this is a look at winter wheat, which boy, looking back at the flooding in April really hit the winter wheat hard in Kentucky. Unfortunately, it was able to recover pretty rapidly. We did have a lot of drying out during April that allowed the winter wheat to recover, but still low yields compared to previous year, or at least lower quality compared to previous years. Um, and so of all the crops, I think winter wheat's probably been hit the hardest by all the rainfall we had, especially early on. And Matt, you can correct me if I'm wrong in that. If we take a look at soybeans, they've started off pretty well, especially compared to the previous years. Um, so far, so good. It sounds like, at least talking to our ag department down here at Western, corn and soybeans are off to a good start. And turning to corn, statewide, we are ahead of the last 3 years, at least 22, 23, 24. Um, and generally, corn likes a lot of rain, so maybe that's helping the corn some there. And then pastures are the best they've been in at least the last couple of years, and uh, pretty high percentage there saying the fields are good or excellent, so about 80%. All right, well, turning to the week ahead, outlook, looking ahead. Uh, it's interesting, this 7-day total was quite a bit drier just a day or two ago. And I went to update it this morning. I was really surprised at all the rainfall they had for Kentucky over the next week. So the forecast is definitely getting wetter from where we were a day or two ago, which may or may not be good news depending on where you live or the water, how much rainfall you need. But the trend is definitely getting wetter again, although compared to a lot of the country, will be somewhat drier than other areas that need it more than we do. Looking at the hazard outlook, there is some heat coming next week. Most of it will stay to our north and will be seasonable, but will be warm, but hopefully not extreme like we've had. And this is primarily over the weekend. But you see some heavy rains creeping in, and they're creeping into the western parts of the state. We'll see how much we get from that, but um, that's still about a week away. Now, turning to the outlooks, again, a day or two ago, they had a slight chance of above normal, but now we're in the dark green. So things have changed pretty quickly, at least on the precipitation side. Temperature-wise, will remain warm, above average, uh, at least for the next week or so, with cooler temperatures to the west. Now, the 8 to 14, kind of a persistence of that, above normal rainfall for all of Kentucky, Ohio, Tennessee valleys, and parts east. Warm temperatures, but maybe not terribly so in the next several weeks. So you could say more of the same from what we're seeing the last few weeks. Now, if we look the month ahead, this is for all of July. Generally above normal rainfall, although this map on the right reflects kind of the thinking a few days ago. So if they updated this again, it would probably look more like what you just saw, where the whole state is probably above normal. But they do expect above normal temperatures for the month, but there's not a lot of confidence in that compared to some of uh, some of these outlooks. And if we look at the season, July, August, September, again, you could say more of the same. Above normal temperatures and near to above normal precipitation. So not much change forecast for the next, really next 3 months. Now, if we go out even further and take these with a grain of salt, temperature-wise, above normal temperatures. Part of this is just the long-term climate change, temperature increases, so that's kind of built into these numbers. But we've been above normal for the last several years, so maybe that's a safe bet. They do have our temperature chances for this winter at least the western half is equal chances. So maybe we'll see some cooler air come in this winter compared to maybe the last couple of years. But we'll see. A lot of this is based on the ENSO. It's predicted to be a neutral to maybe a La Nina phase. And so these temperatures largely reflect that, not much else. Now, if we look at precipitation, they have for this fall equal chances of above or below normal, and we've had fairly dry falls the last couple of years. So maybe we'll see a dry fall again. But if we look at the winter, we have above normal precipitation expected. Maybe that combined with our some cooler temperatures, maybe we'll see some snow this year again. But then not much signal going into next spring and summer. And I think there's still a lot of unknowns there with INSO and a lot of the teleconnections. And this is the INSO outlook right now. Again, they're kind of on the fence about whether we'll go into another La Nina or remain in a neutral phase. A lot of uncertainty there moving into the winter. And again, this is the models, a lot of uncertainty. But things will probably stay close to where they are right now. Even if we move into an official La Nina, it might be a weak one, the way it looks. Moving into drought, again, not much drought east of the Mississippi, east of the Rockies even. And what drought there is east of the Rockies is improving, whereas points to the west of the Rockies are becoming drier. And not much difference between the monthly and seasonal outlooks there. And remaining wet for our part of the country, for sure. And that's kind of reflected in the fire outlooks. Nothing really east of Mississippi at all in the foreseeable future. So that's good news through the rest of, well, through October. So just to summarize, June was the 16th wettest on record. This follows the 7th wettest February, the 2nd wettest April, and the 14th wettest May. And you combine all that, and that's going to keep 2025 as the wettest year on record out of our 131 years. So pretty amazing numbers to get 4 months all in the top 20, all in the top 16, all in one year. That's why we're nearly 2 inches above the previous record. And some locations have already exceeded their average annual totals. We've got at least two measurement stations over 50 inches, another 6 to 8 sites over 46 inches for the year. So just tremendous numbers. I'm just amazed at every time it rains, just how high these rainfall amounts are. We've also been pretty warm the last month, and so that tied us as the 10th warmest on record, 10th warmest June. So that's one thing for lots of people talking about is just how hot it's been, and I don't disagree. So the good news, no drought on the horizon, soils remain moist, no fire danger. Maybe some dryness in the week ahead. I thought we'd dry out, but now maybe not as much as we thought. And the long term remains average to moist, at least for the foreseeable future. I know the dynamical models were showing that we would dry out maybe this fall, but all those models have changed course and now they're not predicting that anymore. Um, so we'll see. The summer outlook remains warm temperatures and average to above average rainfall and generally normal rainfall for the remainder of the summer and above normal temperatures for the fall. So with that, oh yeah, there again, our next regularly scheduled webinar is August 7th and at our normal time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Central. And if you do have any questions or feedback, feel free to contact me at or Matt Dixon or Chip Zimmer. And we thank you again for your participation. So thanks for joining on this soon to be holiday weekend. So thank you. So, any questions or comments? And apologies for not getting that reminder out sooner. I'm starting to be in holiday mode, I think.
Hey,
I think
Jerry,
we're all. Go
oh,
ahead,
I'm
Ron.
sorry.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, Jerry, I look forward to seeing you in Albany in a couple weeks.
Yep, sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah, that'll be a fun trip.
Yeah, I think it will be.
Yeah, Matt, any comments from the ag side?
You know, overall, and I always tell people this, I'd rather it be a little too wet than too dry. Um, sure, planning was a tough go for some folks this spring. Um, but at the end of the day, I'd rather have a little bit more moisture than none. And I was checking the crop report. You mentioned it in the presentation. It's driving me crazy that we don't have the state reports anymore to quickly summarize everything. But look at the national report. It has Kentucky at 25% corn in the silking stage. And this is a point in development where water demand is highest for the corn crop. I'm looking at a chart here. I pull up my computer, but between tassel, silking, and whatnot, corn's using about 3/10 of an inch of water per day. So, as you mentioned, having pretty good topsoil moisture, pretty good subsoil moisture going into these developmental stages is really what we want to see. Now that outlook, maybe short-term dryness, maybe not what we want to see, but again, we got that moisture still in the ground, so we can still deplete some, but as long as the rain returns here in a couple weeks, I think we'll be good to go. But pastures wise, I've been hearing good things. I just talked to some guys that cut hay in Mercer County, and he said it's the best yields he's seen in quite some time. Um, so let the rain keep on coming. That's all I gotta say.
No, that sounds good. I live next to the WKU farm, and I've never seen it quite so green and grown up and for at this time of year. I mean, it really
We
is amazing.
we were out at Woodford County, at our Woodford County farm yesterday, and I was expressing the exact same thing, just how green it was outside. So for early July, I'll absolutely take that. Hopefully it continues. Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think we're on track for our wettest year on record. It'll be interesting to see if we stay that way. But if we stay that way, I believe it'll be a good thing for agriculture. Let's just avoid those like major rainfall events. So um, I know there's some specialists here. They always say if only we could just get an inch of rain, of gentle soaking rain once a week for the rest of the summer will be great, but it rarely works out that way. So
Yeah. Are there, I know a few friends are trying to grow squash and then they're complaining a lot and are there specialty crops across the state that are suffering a bit that you know of or
I haven't heard a ton from that particular sector this year. I would assume disease is an issue just with how wet and humid it's been. Um, I know personally I've been having some trouble in my own garden, but I'm not a pro like a lot of the farmers across the state. But yeah, my assumption would be disease is probably a major issue this year. So
well that was my other question was about pest and disease and but again like you said I've heard a lot of good things from the farmers as far as their yields
yeah,
so
yeah.
it's good news. Anything anything else? just FYI, it was somewhat of an interesting factoid. On Friday, we had some storms roll through, and I think the ASOS and a Mesnet station got taken out at the same time by a lightning strike. I don't know if it was the same lightning bolt or how close these two sites are, but they both got taken out on Friday, and I think the Weather Service folks and the Mesnet folks were out at their sites on Tuesday and got them back, or at least we got the Mesnet site back. I know the Weather Service was working on theirs, but those electrical storms can take their toll. And
I know the Mesnet stations aren't cheap. I can only imagine what ASOS station costs. So.
right. Yeah, a lot more in the Mesnet station, I'm guessing. Yeah, it is interesting. Sometimes the station will take a direct hit, and other times it'll take an indirect hit. And this one was near Frankfurt, and it was somewhere in between. It took out the data logger and some sensors, and but yeah, not a cheap loss for sure.
Oh, no, no.
Anything else? It is an interesting weather year so far for Kentucky. We're probably due a non-interesting year for sure after this year.
I wouldn't mind some boring weather here and there. So,
Yep, yep, yep. Well, I missed last month's webinar and I felt totally in the dark on Matt, you gave last month's, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so I missed sitting in on these. You know, it kind of catches you up.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
thanks. Yeah. Anybody else? Well, thank you for joining in and have a happy 4th of July. And we will, Ron, I will see you in Albany next, well, a couple of weeks from now. And
Sounds good.
hope to see everybody here this time next month.
Have a good 4th. Bye-bye.
You ought to. Thank you. Bye.